Hello, our Valero community. Welcome back to the Valero podcast with myself, Kate Baldwin. We have Nick Baldwin and the crucial part of the team as well, Joe Skipper. How are you, Joe?
I'm good, thanks. Getting the training done. Weather's taking a bit of a turn for the worst. I don't think you two would be too fond of the weather we've got at the moment. Like, did a run session on Saturday and it said the real feel was -2. So a bit colder than where you are.
Stop it.
And we're still in November.
Yeah.
Still in November, I know. It was chucking it down, freezing cold, windy, proper cross-country session.
Wow. So it's a perfect time for you to wear your new Valero kit, right? Short sleeves.
Perfect conditions for a tri-suit.
I saw Joe that you jumped into a 10K just the other day. How'd that go?
Oh yeah, that was good. That was actually like 3 weeks ago. So I did it because a lot of the guys that I train with were doing Frankfurt Marathon. I didn't really fancy doing a solo session, so I thought I'm just going to enter a 10K and use it as a threshold session. And yeah, it felt really good. Did 31:56. Was solo the whole time, and it felt like I was running like threshold. Like I could have done gone round again if I was in like a more competitive race, if I was running with people. So yeah, I was really pleased with that. Like I think for this time of year and in a solo race like that, it was pretty decent.
Nice.
Yeah, awesome.
Speaking of Frankfurt Marathon, I think we should put that on the cards for us all because there's direct flights from Seychelles to Frankfurt.
You fancy Frankfurt Marathon?
Actually, do you know what? No, not really at the moment. I'll focus on the other things I have on. But maybe we can fly into Frankfurt and go elsewhere from there.
There's options.
There's options.
So you can fly direct from Seychelles to Frankfurt, but you can't fly to London direct?
Not anymore. You used to be able to. They used to have a direct flight, but a lot of the flights now are continental Europe. So we got some options to get to Europe, but mostly, most of the connections go through to Dubai, Doha, places like that. So,
have you guys been going well? Like the marathon training, how's that going? Give us an update on some of the sessions that you've done. Like, what's a couple of tasty sessions that you've done the last couple of weeks?
We've done some good long specific sessions, haven't we?
Yeah, we've done half marathon training, half Android focus, getting the Android Valero app out. So we've been balancing training, parenthood, app, isn't it?
Yeah. Juggling it all.
Juggling it all. But we have been doing some marathon specific sessions.
Yeah, last weekend I got in 3 by 8K it was kind of starting a touch below goal marathon effort and building into it by a few seconds a K each round. And that was done on the treadmill just to kind of try and get a little bit of the quicker speed going compared to running outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got the aircon cranked in the in the gym and the treadmill speed going up, which is hopefully going to be helpful come race day.
What pace did you start off at then on that? Like minutes per kilometre or... And what did you get down to for the last 8K?
Yeah, 3:29s for the first 8, 3:27s for the middle, 3:25s for the last 8K.
And are you hoping to hold like 3:27s then for the marathon? Is that what you're like?
That would be ultimate dream goal pace.
All right.
And it's probably a touch aggressive, to be honest. So maybe closer to about a 3:30 is going to be a bit more realistic. But yeah, the goal push kind of effort level and pace is going to be around that 3:27.
I'm tempted to. What about you, Kate? What did you do? Because I was going to say something, but I'll let you tell us what session you did then.
I've done 4 6K efforts, and I was very happy with these. Actually, I did one. My first one was slower than my hopeful marathon pace. The next one was and then the next one was faster, and the next one was faster, and they felt good. So it was a confidence booster for me.
You took your lactate.
I did.
During
yes. I did. You should have seen us. Super nerds.
Did you get any? Have you had any error reads on it? Because it's quite tricky, isn't it, to get it properly?
When you're doing it on yourself.
It's not easy doing it solo, especially when you're just covered in sweat and you're trying to keep the treadmill going, and then you're trying to take the rest, and
and in the cold, it's impossible. Because you just can't get the blood out, when you train in the cold. You just can't get enough.
Issue.
Yeah.
Ours was the opposite. We're like bleeding out. But yeah, so I did 6K at 4:34s, blood lactate of 1.3, which is very reassuring. 6K at 4:28s, blood lactate of 1.6. 6K at 4:24s, blood lactate of 3.5, and then 6K 4:26. Sorry, 4:24s was the one before, then 4:26s blood lactate of 3 millimole.
So it's crazy, isn't it, when you see like how much it shoots up just from a couple of kilometers and just from a couple of seconds a K, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
like
And then put it back down a couple of seconds and it's like completely stabilizes again. So it's good though. It's so good being a bit of a nerd and having.
Did you feel the perceived effort was a lot harder when you were just a couple of seconds a kilometre faster, or did it not really? So you were surprised by the lactate was so much higher?
I was surprised. It felt very comfortable still. It didn't feel much fast. I mean, it felt a little bit faster, but not that much. But still, even going from 1.6 to 3.5, for me, I think that's still very much below my threshold. So I still even think for myself, knowing my numbers, if I could sit around there, I'd be fine in a marathon. It wouldn't be pretty, but it's not about being pretty.
I'm tempted to do a marathon over the Christmas period. Like the other year, I did I did a 50k run to my parents' house, like for a bit of a challenge, and wanted to go under 3 hours. And then I was talking to Techno this year, and I was like, I really fancy doing a marathon. There's not really any on, is there? Like between like Christmas and New Year, you know, that kind of thing. And training's always a bit easier then. And I was like, and then I had like a few people that like decent runners that had done a marathon. Like one of them was like that Matt Fox who'd done one, and he was saying that he felt like he got a lot of fitness, you know, from doing it, and was talking a bit on his podcast about like doing a marathon. Sometimes you kind of get a boost of fitness, and then you actually go better when you've got like a second one, you know, like 6 weeks or so later, because you've done the whole build up for one, you've got that boost of fitness, and then recovered, and then like, you know, got a decent block of training in. And I was like, I'd love to do one like over there. So I've got this really nice loop near our house, which is like just under 4k long, and it's like got a little climb. I say a little climb, it gains like 4 meters, 5 meters, but it's a really nice loop where you can kind of get in a good flow. Like the hill goes pretty quick, but then you get a nice downhill on the back side of the course, so it kind of keeps you interested. And it's like, I would say it's pretty fast. And me and my friends have always talked about, oh, wouldn't it be good to do like a marathon round here, you know, because like it just goes so quick, like every time you do laps. So I'm thinking, if I'm going to look for a nice period of weather between Christmas and New Year, and I think I might have a crack at doing one, not like completely flat out, but like a hard effort. Like, you know, I don't think like I could really fancy doing a marathon like really hard, like flat out, totally like solo with just Techno on the bike. But like I fancy doing a solid effort and trying to get like a quick time, like trying to do a quick time. I think it would be quite fun. And obviously, I think like,
Dubai mid-January. Come on.
I know the problem with that one was like that training camp that I had booked in Gran Canaria was like pretty much on the same time, and that's the problem with getting out to that one. Ideally, I'd like to do a half marathon or something in December and get a qualifying time for the championship one in London. But it's just I didn't realise when, because I didn't really think about it until this season had already been long done, and then now trying to find like looking for half marathons that aren't a pain in the ass to get to and on reasonably quick courses is actually quite hard, isn't it? I mean, for you guys, it must be like really hard to try and find races out there in the Seychelles, but it's like you can find like the odd 5k and 10k. But
South Africa and Dubai are local for us.
Is that what?
Inter-island flight as well. So
because we're on the second island, so we've got to get a flight to the bigger island.
I saw you did a 10k, didn't you? Like you two recently, and you had to get a flight from one island to the other.
Yeah, you got to fly to a race.
It's not like you can just wake up in the morning, like, because like for me, I want to find a race where I can like stay in my own bed, wake up at like 7 o'clock, drive 30-40 minutes, do the race, and be back home by lunchtime.
I can hear it all that.
We got a boat to the last one, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. To the other one. We had to get a boat to the other island, ride our bike to the hotel because there are no cars on that island. Then
no cars on the island?
No, you used to have to get around by ox.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Anyways, so you left a week before. You did a 10k and you had to leave a week before just to get there in time.
You wouldn't ride an ox. Yes, the ox carried the cart with you in it. Yes. I'm picturing Joe going to Lateen and hopping on an ox. Is this how it's done? Anyway, we're going completely off topic here. here. We did want to let all our users know that by the time that this podcast episode is live, the Android version is out. Okay, we are so excited. Please keep in mind it is just Nick, Joe, and myself. Well, and our app developers, we don't make the app, but it's just us three behind the scenes. That's it. So we have worked so hard on this Android to get it out, and we know it's been a long time coming. So it is out on the Android. What's the Android store? Google Play.
Google Play
It is out on Google Play now, and you can download it. You can access all our programs. We will also have the program of the exercises we're going to chat about in today's podcast on there. There's everything you need: mobility, injury prevention, performance, triathlon, runner, swimmer, whatever you need, it's on there. So thank you for being patient. Jump on, download it. You get a 2-week free trial. As Joe always says, if you don't like it, you can flip it off. All right, but please don't. But it is there. It's at our intro price, $9.99 Australian dollars a month if you sign up between now and the 29th of December. Then that price is locked in for you forever. So jump on board, support Team Valere. And you can get strong, which does lead us on to the topic of today's podcast episode, which is 2 of arguably the most well-researched lower limb and core exercises that you can do at home. These are pure body weight exercises that you can do to help you improve your performance and decrease your injury risk as a runner and a triathlete. So Nick and Joe have tried these 2 exercises. I've made them their own specific program on the app that they have, I don't think very diligently been doing, but they have been doing it to some degree. But Nick and Joe, before you did this program, you opened up the app and you saw these 2 exercises. If I had said to you, there are 2 amazing bodyweight exercises that you can do that have been shown in the research to help decrease injury risk of lower limb injuries and will help you run and bike faster, what 2 exercises do you think I would have given you? Because I don't think they would have been 2 in there.
I would have definitely said calf raises, because you love the seated calf raise one. So I would have said like calf raises.
Well, yes. Do you know it's killing me doing this podcast episode about these 2 exercises and not having calf stuff in there.
Really?
So, yes, you're right.
I would have definitely said that one. And then the second one, I'm not entirely sure. What would you go for, Nick?
So like you, I would have said calf raises of some description for my first pick, single leg, obviously. And for a bodyweight lower limb exercise, I might have maybe initially been thinking something along the lines of like a single leg squat. Might have been my guess, but I know I'm wrong.
If I termed it bodyweight lower limb and core exercise, would have that changed what? There's one other one I'm thinking of that I think most people would go, oh, it's got to be this. If I say the best home body weight exercise, I find there's always a go-to that people do. What do you think?
There's one that comes to mind, but I know subconsciously I'm cheating because I actually know what the answer is. I might have said glute ham raise, bodyweight glute ham raise.
No, I don't think enough people know what that is.
No.
I reckon she'd have said a sit-up.
Do you know that second? That would have been my second one. People always do a plank.
Okay.
I always think people go, oh, it's got to be a plank. Like, planks are the best thing in the world. I'm like, no, they're not.
I knew it wouldn't be a plank because I knew you're not that keen on it. But I almost said plank because I know you don't really like them, just as a bit of a piss take. But, I mean, you do the planks, don't you, more where it's like on the side, don't you, rather than like the standard.
Side planks, absolutely. And look, I say these 2 exercises are amongst the best. It's because they're the most researched. And to be honest, these 2 exercises were made quite famous by football. So one of them are named actually after the Copenhagen Football Club because it was sort of sensationalized by them. So these are really made famous by team sports. And
why were they so used then in team sports?
We'll chat about all of that. So these are arguably the 2 most researched, but do I think they're the ultimate 2 bodyweight exercises? Arguable. They need some calf stuff and we need definitely some side planks in there, but I am going to focus on these 2 because I think that for time efficiency, these 2 are great. So I'm going to explain them. Actually, just quickly, Joe, before you saw this, did you know what these 2 exercises were? Because I haven't made you do them before.
I had no idea. Absolutely no idea what they were. So I wouldn't have had a clue until I saw the video on how to do it.
I love it. That's good. I think a lot of people will be like, oh, these are new. So these two amazing lower limb exercises. The first one is called a Nordic Hamstring Curl. And anyone that's listening and knows what they are will be like, oh, yuck. So Nordic Hamstring Curls are number one. And the second one is a Copenhagen plank or a Copenhagen adductor hold. I call them Copenhagen adductor holds because they work your adductors, but they're also known as a Copenhagen plank. So I'll quickly explain them for our podcast listeners. So a Nordic hamstring curl, and if you're listening to this on YouTube, we'll put a video over this, but I'm going to try and explain it in a way that people could visualize it. So if you are kneeling on the floor and you're just kneeling on your knees, obviously that's kneeling, and you have a partner behind you and they are holding onto your feet, okay, you have to keep yourself upright. So you're imagining that imagine you sort of have a stick down your spine and you're keeping your upper back really nice and upright. Your hands should be by your side. So your hands should be by your side up next to your shoulders with your palms facing away from you. And your partner is securely, so make sure you have a partner that you trust, holding down your ankles and they're stabilizing you. And what you have to do from there is you are ever so slowly as you can, lowering yourself down towards the ground in a controlled manner until you can't anymore. Then you will lose control and you will put your hands out in front of you so you don't fall down, obviously, and smack your face. You put your hands out in front of you and you catch yourself and then you come back up again. Up nice and upright, control yourself down. With this one, imagining that stick down your spine the whole time, so your body's staying nice and neutral, so your head and your back are neutral, so you're not hinging from the hips. A lot of people make the mistake and they sort of hinge down from the hips when they're doing them. You're keeping your body nice and straight. So that's a Nordic hamstring curl. Does that make sense?
It does. I've got some questions, but I'll come back to them.
Okay. Do you want to ask, should we do Nordics first and go on to Copenhagen?
Actually, yeah,
let's
do that.
So let's focus on...
So your explanation was really good, but when I've seen Nordic hamstring curls on video clips, often, in my mind, I think of rugby players, for example. And when I see them done, I see them going and extending all the way forwards, almost to the point where their face or chin is just above the ground, and they'll hover, and then they'll pull themselves back.
Yeah.
So is that not what you should be doing to do Nordic hamstring curls?
Joe, did yours look like that when you did them? Did you control yourself down?
No, I would. No way I could control myself like that.
I really want to see footage of. So this is. I'm so glad you raised this because these are so sensationalized by football players, rugby players, AFL.
But they must practice them shitloads to be able to do
100%,
like
because
that.
they're so effective. So a lot of these team sports players have hamstrings of steel, and they can literally. And do yourselves a favor and have a look at some of these videos because it's phenomenal.
But why would they need hamstrings of steel and like? What benefit is that for them? Like, I mean, I'm not even like just asking it for the sake of it, like because they're just running and like doing stuff, obviously with the ball, like either kicking the ball, catching it in rugby, like, but they're sprinting to it. Why do they need such strong hamstrings? Why is it like so big in these team sports?
Okay, so it's big in team sports and endurance athletes. And I'll explain, first of all, what hamstrings are and what they do, and then you'll understand why it's so important. So your hamstrings are our posterior thigh muscles, okay? They originate on what's called the ischial tuberosity. So that's known as your sit bone, okay? So like the bony part that you feel when you sit down. That's where your hamstrings originate from. Then there's multiple hamstring muscles. They're called hamstrings because if you hang a pig up and like it's hanging down, it looks like ham. It's like, that's why they're called hamstrings, legitimately. That's why they're called that. And your hamstrings at the bottom, you have some that semi-tendinosus, so they're the ones that come down and split over the back of your knee, okay? They're the ones that come and insert onto your tibia, so your shin bone. And then you've got the other ones on the outside that split and they insert onto your fibula, so the smaller bone in your lower limb. So if you imagine that, then your hamstrings cross two joints, and they're very unique in this way. They cross your hip joint and they cross your knee joint. So whatever joints your muscles cross, they play a role on that joint, okay? So they're biarticular. They work on two joints, and that's really unique. That's why they're big and strong. So your hamstrings do both hip extension, albeit they're a little bit weaker because our glutes play a big role in hip extension. So why that's important, if you can imagine, hip extension is when you're on the bike and you're obviously more at the bottom of your pedal stroke, and then you're extending through your hip to come back up again. Same as when you're running and you're in your stance phase, so your foot is touching the ground, your hamstrings will work to help propel you forwards. Okay, that's the role they play on the hips. Because they also cross the knee, they play a role on the knee, and they are the strongest, well, they are the knee flexor. Okay, so they bend your knee. That's really, really important, especially when it comes to running in the swing phase. So you can think of hamstrings when you're running. The extension part plays a role in the stance phase, so when your foot's on the ground. Okay, in the swing phase is when your foot is off the ground and you are extending your lower limb. Your hamstrings work in what's called an eccentric way. So they're working, but they're contracting to help prevent your lower limb from overstriding. So if they weren't working, your lower limb would literally just flick out, your foot would land so far away from underneath your body, and you would be a huge heel striker, and it would cause so much impact through your body. So your hamstrings work to slow that down. Now, if you can imagine, so that's really how they work in running, okay, and cycling. If in team sports, there's such high velocity because there's so much sprinting that goes on, which is why hamstrings get under so much load, and because they cross two joints, they're sort of like double loaded. But if you can imagine in kicking, so when you are kicking, it's really, really high velocity, so it's a very quick movement, and because those hamstrings cross two of those joints, they work so fast, your quads work so fast to extend your knee, your hamstring is lengthened so far because of its the way that it originates and inserts at such a high speed, it's at really high risk of tearing. You're either going to tear the muscle or you're going to get some form of tendon issue. So that's why like hamstring injuries and groin injuries are the most common in team sports. So that's why they focus so much on these. And doing these Nordic hamstring curls can decrease the incidence of any form of hamstring injury by 51%. Like, it's huge. In fact, there are some football clubs that report their athletes doing Nordic hamstring curls and the incidence of their hamstring injuries goes down to zero. Like,
Really?
yeah, they're so effective. I wish this research was done more in runners. I know there's someone doing it at the moment in runners, but to have a decrease in injury in a sport where you put so much load through the hamstrings of 51% is just huge. And that's
What
why.
I've got this question that I've got to say is then,
Hmm.
it was great for injury prevention, but if you don't suffer from injuries in your hamstring, would it
Mhm.
make you any faster? Like, would it make me put out more power on the bike or run faster, or is it purely for injury prevention?
So I there's no study that has looked at it in terms of improving your performance directly when it comes to like running or cycling economy or time trial performance. But we do know that maximal strength training can significantly improve cycling economy and running economy. So the big question here is, well, we know maximal strength training is so good for performance. We traditionally do stuff like, say, heavy deadlifts, heavy weighted hip thrusts, etc., to hit those maximal strength training parameters. Now Kate's saying, well, hang on, here's this really good body weight exercise. But with Nordics, because they're so tough and they work your hamstrings eccentrically, which means that you're loading them and they're lengthening, research does show that doing them significantly improves the maximal voluntary contraction, so the maximal strength, and the eccentric strength of the hamstring muscles. And we know that that will translate over really nicely to improvement in running economy. And because of how hard they are, your set and rep ranges of doing Nordic hamstring curls is generally smack bang perfect when it comes to improving maximal strength. So it's things like
Yeah,
3 sets of
I
5,
was
3
going to
sets
say
of 4.
that it's like it's a body weight one, but it's not like your standard body weight one where, like, say if you were doing like press ups, you could do like 30 or 40 at a time. Like this one, it feels like it's more of a maximal strength one because it's so hard that you can't do that many unless you're like really strong. But then I
Yeah.
guess if you're really strong, like say like them footballers or rugby players that do them, they might even hold like a weight on their chest as they go down, can't they, to make it a bit more harder?
Yes, and you've totally nailed that though, Joe. And that's why I love Nordic hamstring curls, because to make them harder, you change the intensity. So you keep them in the heavy strength training parameters. So let's say, like I think Joe gave you 4 sets of 5 reps of the Nordic hamstring curls on your program. but I wouldn't change those reps. Now, often when it comes to bodyweight exercises, the issue I have with them of not being able to improve maximal strength is most of the time you need to increase the reps. You can't change the intensity because it's body weight, right? So that's what makes them hard. But with Nordics, you can change the intensity because all you do is you just end up going down lower and lower towards the ground. So your time under tension is increased. And there was a study that looked at the percent of the maximal voluntary contraction of the hamstrings doing Nordics. It was greater than 80%, which means it fits in really nicely with those heavy strength training parameters. So you can increase the intensity, which makes it perfect body weight. So I'm just picturing like you see these amazing team sports players lowering down beautifully, virtually kissing the floor and coming back up. In your mind, when you do them, you feel like that, right? But then you video yourself and you look and you move like 2 centimeters.
I'll get a video today because I'm going to the gym today and swimming. So I'll get Techno to sit on my feet and I'll get someone to send a video and you can post it up with this podcast.
Maybe we can do a critique Joe's Nordic.
Yeah.
And you, Nick, you're not getting out of it as well, mate. You're going to be doing it as well.
Joe, we could measure the angle how about, okay, let's do a challenge, Joe. If anyone can do better, no, because then lots of people can do better and they'll never mind,
We'll think of something.
But we'll definitely tag us
Send us your videos and we'll post them up on our stories, like if you're doing the Nordic the Nordic curl.
Okay, similar to what Joe was mentioning earlier about, well, if you're not getting hamstring injuries, are these so specific to you? I think, in my mind, when I think of hamstring injuries for runners, let's say, for example, I think it's more higher intensity running that typically is what instigates hamstring-related injuries.
Yeah.
Are hamstring injuries that prevalent in endurance athletes? So obviously specifically runners and triathletes?
That's a really good question. I did do a big survey in my PhD, and hamstring injuries were actually quite common. There are a few important things to point out. This is a really good question. You're right, like generally long distance athletes, runners and triathletes will not often sustain acute hamstring injuries. So the injuries you would see in football players is not the same type as what you would see in runners. Runners would get more like overuse tendinopathies. So that's pain at the back of the knee where the hamstrings insert. So that's more what this would target. And also this is what's called a knee dominant hamstring exercise. So what I mean by that is because the hamstrings cross the hips and the knees, you generally, when you get a hamstring injury, it's important to differentiate where you get it. So tendinopathies are more often, well, kind of depends, but you can get origin or insertion like pain. So this won't prevent sit bone, like ischial tuberosity type hamstring pain, because it's not a hip dominant movement. We're not moving the hips, we're moving the knees. So this exercise in particular is really good for athletes who get a lot of hamstring tendinopathies, hamstring muscle tears, but that would be on the back end of long runs, or cyclists whose saddle height's too high, or if you just prefer a higher saddle height and you just can't hack it, this would be perfect for you because you are lengthening the hamstrings in that nice eccentric way. So if you can imagine the hamstrings are lengthening as you're lowering down, it builds up strength in that lengthened position. So it'd be perfect for someone with a higher saddle height. It would also, what was I going to say? I was going to touch on, I'm just getting so excited about Nordic Hamstring Curls. I was going to say it's also perfect, yes, it's perfect for people trying to increase their cadence when they're running as well, because it's one thing to say have a higher cadence because we know that's generally more economical, and two, can help minimize your risk of injuries. But like we were sort of touching on back in episode 1, there's no point like changing your cadence if your body can't hack it. If you imagine trying to change your cadence, you're effectively also trying to shorten your stride maybe a little bit as well. So you can't do that without having the hamstring length and tolerance to be able to stop your lower limb from overstriding. So it's really effective in that way as well. But also, your Nordics still work glutes and core as well. So they work your abdominals and your back muscles too. So they can also be really effective in just helping maintain posture as well during long runs, helping you not fatigue through there. So sure, if you don't sustain hamstring injuries, you might be like, maybe this isn't the one for me, but it's still a really good core, hip, hamstring one. If you are the opposite, if you get quad injuries or you want to lengthen your quads, you can do a reverse Nordic. There's not as much research on these, but if you can imagine kneeling and instead of slowly controlling yourself forwards, you slowly control yourself back. It's really
I
good
would
for.
struggle with flexibility in that. Like, I think on my back.
They're
Like,
really good. I gave these to Jack Moody. Jack Joe,
yeah.
so he's a professional triathlete from New Zealand. And I don't know, he hasn't hit me up after those. No, I'm kidding. He has. He's like, can you remove them? They're horrible. But they're really good in exactly the opposite way. So for improving flexibility, Joe, like through your hip flexors and your quads. So they're a really good body weight option too. If you're listening and you're like, I don't know, I get more hip flexor, quad tightness, just literally reverse the movement.
Cool.
Yeah, I got really excited about Nordic Hamstring Curls. Any other questions about our Nordics?
Not that I can think of. I mean, that covers what I was at least going to ask about them. Any others from you, Joe?
I do have a good point.
I haven't got any other questions now. I thought you pretty much covered it. What were you going to say, Kate, then?
Well, I was going to say, Joe, I know you've done some recently, but how did you pull up like the day after the first time you did them?
I was all right the day after. I just struggled. It was more in the moment where I thought they were like brutal.
Did you feel like your hamstring was going to pop the bone?
It just like really intense, like just really hard, really. Like I was surprised, and I thought it was going to be hard when I saw it because it looked pretty tough having to control your body weight to go down, but it was definitely a lot harder than what I was expecting. What about you, Nick? You probably knew what you were letting yourself in for, though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, but like you said, it's definitely harder than I would say most of the other body weight exercises that we would do if we were comparing them. Both kind of, I would say, like you did, Joe, at the moment in the time, it feels a bit more uncomfortable. I think probably from memory, I would have had a bit of soreness afterwards.
Yeah,
I thought the other one was a lot easier.
Really? Well, just quickly
Yeah.
on the Nordics, I will put the program to do these on our app so anyone can access them and gradually build their way into them. But Nordics make you really sore because, well, they can. You two obviously pulled up fine, probably because they make you do all the other strength training. But first of all, you need to warm up. So do some hamstring warm ups. Don't go jump straight into Nordics. And don't go high reps on these because they work your hamstrings so eccentrically. The delayed onset muscle soreness or the DOMS the next day can be a lot. So start off, small and then slowly build your way up with them. So proper warm up and don't go crazy on the sets and the reps because otherwise
when you say start off small, what are you talking, like 2 or 3 reps or starting off with like 5 or 6?
Yeah, I would even start off once a week of doing like one set of 2 or 3 reps and then the next you could do that twice a week, then you could slowly build it up from there. So just don't go crazy to start with because they can make you sore and you just don't want that to affect your other training.
All right, then should we go on to the next exercise?
Yeah, so you found these easier, Joe?
I thought these were easier than the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Joe overall.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So also, I didn't give you guys a true Copenhagen. So this
here we go.
Hang on.
Kate's putting our core strength down, Joe.
Yeah, I was like, do you know what? They can't hack it. So a Copenhagen plank or Copenhagen adductor hold for anybody listening is if you are in a side plank position, you would have a partner, and I'll explain how you can set this up yourself, but traditionally done in like the football teams, they do pair up when they do this. A partner would hold your top leg up off the ground, and you would then lift your bottom leg up off the ground as well. So you're virtually doing a side plank with your partner holding onto your top leg. So your adductors, which is the inside of your thigh, your inner thigh, is working really hard to help you stay upright. So it's like a side plank, but you're working your adductors, the inside of your thigh, instead of your abductors. In saying that, I suppose a true Copenhagen plank that is commonly done in the football teams, with the bottom leg goes all the way down to the ground and up again, down to the ground and up again. So you're virtually doing a leg lift with your bottom leg. So that then really helps you work your hip abductors, so your glutes on the bottom leg as well. So then you're getting so much out of this movement. You're getting your adductors, the inner thigh, you're getting your abductors, your glutes lots of core, but it's also a really nice shoulder loading exercise as well, because you're putting a lot of load obviously through that area. So it's another really nice all-round kind of lower limb exercise. And these have been shown to decrease the incidence of injuries by 41% in groin and hip injuries. Again, predominantly in team sports athletes, hasn't really been looked at too much in depth when it comes to runners and triathletes. Well, nothing in triathletes, but it would be really interesting to see that incidence carry over to endurance sports.
So with these, is that something you do by counting the number of reps if you're doing the leg lift, or do you do it by time if you are not doing?
Traditionally, it's actually done by reps with the leg lift, but that's really hard. So I can take you through some progressions and regressions of them as well. But if you're doing it without the leg lift, you could go by time, but it's traditionally done by counting the number of reps of the lower leg lift in there. You can do this without a partner, where you can literally just put your foot up on like a bench or a chair and have your lower leg go up and down as well, which is what you'll see we do in the app, because I don't want everyone to feel like they have to have a partner to do these.
No, it's not practical, obviously, when you have to rely on someone if you go to the gym by yourself.
Yeah, you could make gym friends, but it might be a bit weird. So,
yeah. I know as well, because you told me that there's variations in your leg or foot position on the bench that can impact how hard or easy this is.
Yes, so it's really, if you just think about the lever arm, if you shorten the lever arm, being your leg is the lever arm, if you shorten it, it makes it easier. So what I mean by that is, with your top leg on the bench, or if you have got a partner, if your knee is on the bench or your partner's holding your knee, you're effectively shortening the lever arm, so you make it a lot easier. Then you could go more like mid-shin, so you can shuffle your body slightly further away, and then you can keep on moving away each time that you do them. So that is a way you can increase the intensity, where eventually your end goal is just to have your foot on the bench. So as little of your body as possible on the bench. What did you do, Joe? Did you do the knee ones?
No, I had my foot on there. I didn't even realise that you were allowed to do that. Like, I thought that was cheating.
How long did you hold it for?
I just did like 30 seconds, something like that. I mean, it was hard, don't get me wrong, but compared to the other one, the other one I was terrible at. The Nordic one, like, I could only do like 2 or 3 reps, and they weren't even properly reps, really, I would say. So like, yeah, that was why I felt this one wasn't as hard, because it was like, it's basically like a more intense plank, isn't it? Really, like. Yeah. What about you, Nick? I
would say I found this most challenging from a core perspective, probably more so than from an adductor specific. Perspective.
That's good. It means you got good adductors, which doesn't surprise me with you two, though, of why you found this easier, because you do so much single leg work with your running and with your cycling. Like, you probably
I don't cycle anymore.
Well, okay. With your running, Joe cycling, that you obviously do have some good adductor strength there. Maybe you should work a little more on that core of yours.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that was where I felt it more as well, on the core. Like, a lot more. Like, I didn't really find it that hard on the other areas.
Interesting. So in that case, then, I would probably say to you two, you would maybe be better off doing a little bit more of a core specific one, and then tying in your adductor strengthening with like a more specific movement like a squat, or maybe your single leg squat could be a better option for you, because targeting your adductors, I'll quickly go through like why your adductor strength is really important for runners and triathletes. So a lot of people think of your adductors, the inside of your thigh, as literally just adducting. So what that means is, if you're just standing, think of your midline of your body, imagine just a line going straight down through your body. Anytime you do an adduction movement, so ADD, it means that you're bringing something in towards your midline. So your adductors bring your leg in across your body. Your abductors, ABD, take it away, okay? So we focus so much, and we do this a lot on the Valeria app, where we focus so much on strengthening our hip abductors, because that helps minimize pelvic hip drop. And that's really important when it comes to cycling and running stability in particular, and preventing that being more economical, minimizing other injuries. But it's also important to work on the adductors, the inside of your leg too, because your hip adductors also play a really crucial role in stabilizing your hips. But often what people don't really know about the hip adductors is they play a really important role in hip extension and hip flexion. But they generally only do this throughout different movements. So what I mean by that is when we are flexed at the hip. So let's imagine you're at the top of your pedal stroke, okay, when you're cycling. When your hip is flexed, that's when your adductors actually play a really important role at extending your hip. So then when you're driving down to the bottom of your pedal stroke, your adductors are actually arguably even more important than your hamstrings and maybe even a little bit of your glutes at actually producing that hip extension. Then if you can imagine if your hip's in hip extension, okay, so let's say you're push off when you run, your adductors then act as a hip flexor, so they drive your leg through. So people just think of, oh, adductors are just a bunch of muscles that sit on the inside of your leg and bring your leg in towards midline, but they don't. They play such a crucial role in hip flexion and extension. So that's why I think strengthening them is so important for any athletes that have any form of like bringing the knee up and the hip up.
Do you think that would help with more power on the bike?
This is an interesting one because I try my very best to search high and low for all these amazing bodyweight exercises because I know that a lot of people love them. A lot of people don't have access to a gym or heavy weights. So like our best alternative is to do stuff at home. So doing things like Copenhagen's is great. But I would argue still in this instance that doing something like a loaded squat would be better to help your power on the bike than a Copenhagen because in a squat, you're coming into that hip flexion, you're really recruiting your adductors to stabilize your hips, and then you're recruiting the fibers that also do that nice hip extension as you come out of that squat as well, which is what would replicate your cycling more, right? You're targeting your adductors in a way, doing a squat, say, for example, better than you're targeting them in a way that replicates what they do during cycling during a squat, then your adductor hold.
I've got a question for you, Kate, which isn't to do with the body weights, but it's to do with a squat. So when I go to the gym, I do it with Techno, and I use the normal squat rack to do squats. But Techno uses the Smith machine, is it called, to do a squat?
Oh, yeah.
And I keep saying to him, it's not as good as doing a normal squat because it's just holding it still. What downsides are there to using this Smith machine? Because it can't be using your core properly, can it? If it's holding it straight for you, like what are you losing out on?
So I would argue in his case, like doing that, he would be, I think you're smack bang on right here, he would be getting less core because it's less instability, it's just going up and down. But arguably, because you're removing that component, he might be able to do more weight, which would improve.
He can do more weight, and he reckons he's worried about getting injured if he does it properly. And I said, just start off with a light weight.
You shouldn't get injured.
Well, that's what I said. That's what I said to him. Like, just start off with an easier weight and get the technique. But he doesn't. He's very set in his ways. He likes to do what he does.
If his goal is purely lower limb strength and he doesn't want to maximize core strength, then he can keep doing what he's doing. There's no issue with that. But if he wants to improve his core strength more, I would say he would be better under a barbell.
So if he wants to look a bit better on the beach, then
exactly.
With the Copenhagen adductor holds, is this as good as, for example, a weight adoption with weights, on the hip adduction machine, for example, or is this simply a case of this just being a body weight alternative for people who don't have access to heavier weights or a gym environment?
So you're thinking like if you say had a cable machine or one of those hip, really overpriced hip adduction machines that you put your foot against the roller and it goes in and out. Yeah. First of all, anyone at home won't have one of those because those machines are expensive.
Are they?
But everyone has one. Oh yeah. Oh,
they're a bit limited as well.
Sorry, yes, they're very limited, but also, and I will answer your question in a second, even more awkward is the hip abduction seated ones where you're sitting and you're just opening and closing your legs. It's really weird.
That's what I actually had in mind.
Oh, is that what you have in mind?
all the commercial gyms have them though, I think.
Yeah, they have them at the gym where I go to. Are they actually any good then? Because I never actually...
So this is a really good question. To improve maximal strength of your adductors, you can load up those machines to hit your target set and rep range. So if your goal is to improve maximal strength, arguably they would be better. But there's a trade-off, right? Because your Copenhagen, but they don't work core or anything else. Your Copenhagens also work your core muscles, a bit of shoulder stability, like I was saying. And there's a difference in the way that you load them. So when you're doing your hip adduction ones on the machine basis or the cable, whatever weird machine you want to use, when you're doing that, you're working your adductors in a way that's called concentrically. So that means that it's the most known sort of muscle contraction. So your muscle is contracting and it's shortening, okay? Whereas when you were doing the Copenhagen holds, your adductors are working what's called isometrically. So they're really just working. They're not really lengthening. They're not shortening. They're just switched on. They're just holding you up there, right? Your bottom one, arguably coming up and down, is working differently, but your top leg is just getting loaded through there. So they are quite different in the stimulus that they're going to give you. What would I pick? I would probably pick a Copenhagen over the machine-based ones.
So you're choosing bodyweight exercise over a heavy strength exercise.
I know. Weird. It really hurts. It hurts a lot. Unless the asterisk. Unless I was able to very comfortably do 4 sets of 4 sets of 40 seconds with the lower leg lift, and if I could really comfortably do that and it was not challenging me anymore and I just didn't feel like I was progressing, I'd finish it and be like, that doesn't feel like a maximal kind of effort, I would change to the machines.
Cool. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you said you were going to put these exercises up on the program on the app for people to have a go at?
Yes, I am. I'm going to put them up for anybody who wants to do some really good quality lower limb, purely no equipment needed. Okay, all right. You need either a person or a bench, I guess, to do them. But the best kind of options that you can do to really help minimize injuries and help improve performance, specifically really for bike and run, I'm going to make a program. I'm going to put some progressions and regressions of these in there as well, so you can see how easy or hard to make it. You can ignore the ones that are too easy or hard for you and pick the ones that you feel like are suitable for you in there, okay? And I'll pop it on so everyone can give them a try. You got your free 2-week trial, so if you're not on the app, you can at least jump on and give these a little go if you want to, and you can let us know how they go. We'll make sure we get Joe's video of his Nordics.
I'll get it today.
Joe's going to be practicing diligently over the next couple of days before we do this.
Do you know what I want to see? Okay, Joe, here's your challenge. I want you to come all the way down to the ground, kiss the floor, and go back up. And if you can't do it, you got to stack something up to the height that you can come down.
To see how low I can go. It'll be like stacked up, like right near the top.
Yeah. No, I believe in you, Joe. I think you got good hamstring.
I'll get it today. I'll get one for you today.
Please do. I'm excited.
And then we should do a kind of like a however far down the line, like 3 months, 6 months down the line comparison as well, and see what the improvement looks like. And
we could come back and we could pick our 2 favorite bodyweight banded exercises on these episodes. And then
how low can you go? We'll call it.
How low can you go? Yeah, I love it. Okay, how low can you go?
Perfect. All right, so we've got something to plan going forward.
Fantastic. All right, excellent. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in again to another episode of the Practical Performance Podcast, proudly brought to you by Valere, which is now on Android, it's on iOS, we got PDF programs, we've got everything to please everyone. It's all out there. So
finally.
So jump online, jump on your app store, come and support us. Let us know.
Your Android store as well.
Your Android store. But it is an app store, is it not?
Well, it's Google Play.
Oh, that's wherever you get your app. You can download it now. And we're looking forward to having you on board the Valere team, and we will chat to you all again next time.
Will do.
See ya.